Welcome back. We're ready to go into the next module, Module 2 of the Series 6 from Series 7 Specialist. And we're going to start out with debt securities and corporate bonds. It's kind of interesting that all through life, you have situations where you have two things and one of them gets all the press, the other does all the work. Like any football fans, you know who does all the work. It's those big guys right there on the front line. Who gets all the press though? The quarterback, the running back, the receivers, the flashy guys. It's the same way with securities. Debt does all the work, equity gets all the press. All right, it's exciting to look at it. It's not exciting to look at debt, but debt being the workhorse, it really is heavily tested, so you need to understand debt very thoroughly. The good news on that is that just like we talked about in the overview, you've all lent money and you've all borrowed money. And so you have done exactly what corporations and government entities do, because all that is borrowing and lending. So what's good for you with $5 is good for Procter & Gamble with $5 billion. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of those characteristics. Again, it is debt financing, and then in the outline, when you've got some terms that are important, I've got them underlined and in bold. And so funded debt, if you ever see that term, that's one of those associations we can have, okay? Because again, you're going to have to see the test question structure will be da-da-da-da-da, funded debt up in the question. Well, what you then look for is corporate, first of all, debt. Because if you have any equity, that's not debt. So you throw those out, okay? And then funded debt refers to corporations. So you'll have to throw out governmental agencies and treasury and municipal securities and what have you, okay? Because funded debt refers to corporate borrowing, corporate debt. All right, so keep that in mind, and that's another thing that I want you to do, and I'll really emphasize this because one of the best test-taking tools you can use, believe it or not, is just the process of elimination. And once you've eliminated something, it's gone. Okay? So like in this case, if we saw funded debt in the question, anything that was equity, boom, you throw it out. It's gone. Okay? Usually you can get things down to two answers. If you do, then remember that the test question is not your enemy. The test question is your friend. So what you want to do is you want to take those two answers that you've narrowed it down to, go back up into the test question, mine through that question for that one word or that one phrase that points you this way instead of that way. Okay? That's why it's important to know the definitions. All right, so anyway, funded debt is corporate debt. And here we go. We start in with the terminology. The par value, that's the face amount of the instrument, and corporate debt is always issued in $1,000 chunks. So if you buy $50,000 worth of an XYZ bond, you actually buy 50 discrete $1,000 IOUs. Okay? So par value is the face amount. Registered, the certificate has the owner's name on it, so they know who they need to send the checks to. They've got your address and they'll send it to you. Maturity date is the date the principal amount must be paid back. The coupon or the nominal rate, those two terms are interchangeable. The term actually came from way back in the day when bonds were not in registered form, they were in bearer form. And so what would happen is that you'd have this bond that basically is an IOU, and oh, that's cool, we know that it's $1,000, but the thing is there's nobody's name on it. So how do we know who to send the checks to? Well, we don't send them at all. What we do is that we attach to those things some coupons. And what the investor would do would be to clip this coupon off and then take it into a bank. The bank then would pay that 6 month period of interest, and then like I say, the investor would be satisfied. They'd send it in, get repaid by the corporation. So the thing is, if this is a 6%, each one of these is going to have 6% on it. That's the rate. Let's read it backwards, right? That's the rate that's on the coupon. So the coupon rate is, like I say, the rate of interest. And now what would happen if interest rates went to 2%? They'll still have to pay 6, right? Because that's what they owe. That's what they've agreed to. What happened if it go to 12%? Still have to pay 6% because that's what they agreed to. So that's be good for the investor in the first case, good for the borrower in the other case, just like with you, okay? But that coupon rate, that's where that term comes from. Well, we don't have coupon bearer bonds anymore, and so the thing is that now you have a nominal or stated rate. Here we go, and because Bob is the buyer of this thing, and so I owe you, Bob, $1,000, and I'll pay you 6% once every 6 months, half of that, once every 6 months. So that's the coupon rate, or stated, or nominal rate, or nominal yield. Those are all interchangeable, and that's what it is. It doesn't change, it's the interest rate of the loan itself. A bond that's callable, let's see, able to be called in. Now, you've done this before, okay? Because you had a car loan that was, well, for some reason you had to pay a little bit too much interest, and then 6, 8 months later, a year later, interest rates went down, or maybe your credit improved, something happened. But basically you were able to refinance it, okay, at a lower rate. Well, what you do is that in the refinancing, in the corporate world, that's called a refunding. Or Uncle Fred gave you $15,000. Wow, I'm going to pay off my car. So you just pay it off early. You call in that note and say, I'm going to pay you off. Okay? So callable means that we're able to call it. We're able to redeem it early. And so keeping those two terms separate on which is which, okay? Just remember that a refinancing is called a refunding. Okay? So refinancing and refunding, those go together. And that happens when interest rates go down. Again, what typically in the corporate world, it's just generically interest rates have fallen. Okay? It could be a situation where the credit has improved. All right, but refinance is refunding. A redemption is paying off with surplus funds. When Uncle Fred gave you that money, okay, then you had surplus funds, you're able to pay it off. Let's read that next term backwards. Convertible. It's able to be converted, even though it's spelled I-B-L-E, where it's able to be converted from debt into equity. All right. Now, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. But a convertible bond, basically what you've got is that you have a situation where you have an IOU that's going to pay you interest, but then later on, if the stock does well, you want to ride the rocket. Okay? They've taken your money and now they're just going sky high, and you say, hey, I want some of that action. So you're able to convert it into common stock that benefits from that. A sinking fund, that's a fund that we set up, okay? Basically just a money bucket. We put money in it, and what do we do with that money? We sink some bonds. So we just once a year we'll grab there, take the money, and say, okay, we're gonna call for redemption a certain number of bonds. So it would be as if on your car loan you say, if I were to take a little savings account and if I were to put in $100 a month, then at the end of the year I can make a $1,200 payment, boom, just like that on my car. Why, that's going to get rid of, what, 6, 8 months worth of payments for me? Cool, I'm going to do that. I'm going to shorten up the overall life of that loan. That's exactly what the corporations do. Like I say, there's no difference between you and them. So a sinking fund, it's a fund that we use to sink some bonds. Now a term bond, a serial bond, and a series bond over on the next page, okay? Those are three terms that kind of go together. So a term bond has a stated term. Again, let's kind of look at this thing, okay? We're coming up, every 4 years we have a presidential election. When we have a change of administration, it's not like the old president on inauguration day starts out 100% president, then is 90, 80, 70, 60%, and finally by the time that the new president says, so help me God, they've swapped, no. Boom, That's it. There's a certain day, there's a certain time of day, there's a certain event, so help me God, where the one term ends and the other term stops. Boom, it's sharp. That's a term bond. On this day, the bonds exist. On that day, they're gone. Because on that day, they get retired. Has a single maturity date. So they're either there, boom, the next day they're gone. That's a term bond. Okay? A serial bond is kind of like if you took serial numbers. You know, you've seen those markers that they use down at the courthouse especially, you know, and they index themselves automatically every time you stamp something. Well, that's what they do with the maturity years on these bonds. Is that they say, well, we're going to have some of it this year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. Just like serial numbers, that's when you redeem those bonds. Okay? What that is, that actually emulates in a corporate world a fully amortizing loan. Because what happens with your car loan, with your mortgage, is that every month you pay down a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, okay? Well, they're not going to be doing that every month. They're going to be paying interest every 6 months, and then once a year what they'll do is boom, 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 boom. And see, it kind of emulates that fully amortizing loan to the best they can in a corporate setting. That's a serial bond in what it does. Okay? As they pay those off, then it reduces their debt burden. And really, what happens to your credit when you start out with this much debt and you pay down year by year, month by month? It gets better and better, right? Yeah, same thing with them, just more zeros. It increases the credit worthiness of the corporation. All right? And a series bond, all right, just like the World Series. Okay? World Series, if we were in baseball season, we're not, but if we were, okay, then let's see, we've just played game one, and a certain team won game one. All right? Just finished, we're leaving, going out of the parking lot. Who won game two? No, I don't know. I don't know. We haven't played it yet. Okay? That's the deal with a series bond, is that we borrow, we know what that first set of borrowing looks like, but we don't know what the second set looks like because we haven't got there yet. In another 6 months, 8 months, whatever, we'll have a second round of borrowing. Ford Motor Company, okay? They tore down the old assembly plant, built a new plant that it's so huge that to take care of water runoff from rain, they had to plant grass on the roof. Lots of other reasons they do it, but basically, you know, for water runoff. Okay? Now, if you've got a building that's that big, does it make sense to borrow money for the paint and wallpaper when you still have to prepare the site? No. Why would you do that? Why would you have that debt outstanding for that long a period of time? Okay? So what they did was that they borrowed money for site prep, then they came back and borrowed money. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Give me some license on this. The idea is important, okay? They then built the infrastructure, the superstructure, okay? Put the dirt up on top, planted the grass. Came back and borrowed again, and then they, you know, all the inside stuff and some of the machinery, borrowed again. Okay, that would be a series bond. That's what they would do, okay? They would borrow in a series of borrowings, just like the World Series is played in a series of games. A mortgage bond, just like your mortgage. The only difference between our mortgage and their mortgage bond is that our mortgage is for a 15, 18, 2,500, 3,500 square foot house. Theirs is for, let's see, it's on about 16 acres and it happens to generate 82 megawatts of electricity. That's the only difference. It's just a big old house. And it's backed up by that real estate. An equipment trust certificate. Man, let's read this one backwards, okay? It's a piece of paper, a certificate, that represents something in a shoebox, and that's all a trust is just a shoebox. Okay? Well, what's in the shoebox? Equipment. What would be a comparable situation for you? What's some equipment that you have a loan on? Maybe your car? Yeah. So what do? They put a little note on that title that, you know, who's the lien holder. It It's exactly the same thing. In fact, what's in an equipment trust certificate, what it's used for to buy, is rolling stock, they'll call it. Railroads use it a lot. Airlines use it a lot. Okay? Or airline leasing companies, airplane leasing companies, what have you. But they'll use it a lot for their rolling stock. Okay? So in any event, there's that. And then also a collateral trust certificate. That's a piece of paper, and it backs it by what's in the shoebox. And that is collateral. That's kind of general, but basically it's like if you took some securities down to the bank and borrowed against those securities, some stocks or some bonds. If the value of those went down, what would you have to do? How about bringing some more stuff? Yeah. Guess what happens with the corporate world? If their securities they put in there go down, they've got to put in more stuff. Okay? Bring in more collateral. A zero coupon, a debenture. A debenture is just a fancy term for a signature loan. I mean, down at the credit union, they'll give you a signature loan. Why? Because you're credit worthy. I mean, you think that I wander in Newtown and they say, I'm Dan, can I get a signature loan? I said, well, how long have you been in town? About 45 minutes. Well, what do you do? Well, I don't have a job yet. Well, what did you do? Well, I haven't worked for about 6 years. Well, where were you living? Oh, I was living down at the shelter. You think they're going to give me a signature loan? I don't think so. But you walk in and you say, look, this is my name, this is where I live here. Look, pull up my credit score. You got, where do they top out? Like 815? I don't know. You've got a 952. This is out the charts. Yeah, there's, oh yeah, how much you need? Glad to do business with. Same thing with debentures. It's a signature loan for a corporation. And then a subordinated debenture. Okay, let's read that one backwards, okay? Sub means under. Ordinated comes from the Latin word from which we get ordinal numbers, okay? So like to count. So order. All right. So it's counted or numbered underneath the others. So if I have a first lien, but then I have a second lien that's subordinated or numbered underneath the other one. All right? And then a zero coupon bond is a bond that has I've erased it, that has that coupon rate of 0%. So once every 6 months, what they're going to do is they're going to just cut you a check for $0.00. But wait a minute. Here's how those work, okay? Basically, you buy those things at a discount because there's your par value up here, and then there's the maturity date right there. And they will build into themselves a compounded rate of return. That's why I didn't draw a straight line, okay? But they'll build in a compounded rate of return all the way to maturity. And the trip from here to here, that is your interest. All right? If a bond is in default, then it trades flat. Flat means that there's no current interest being paid. Okay, so you probably won't see that term on this test, but just in case, if it goes into default, then it trades flat. A point, okay, that's very important. A point on a bond is 1%. In fact, a point it's 1%. Now, if I've got $1,000, okay, then I have 100%, then that means that each point is going to be worth $10. So if I have a bond that's trading at 106, that's 106 points, that's 106 $10 bills, that's 1,060. If I have a bond that's trading at 92, that's 92 $10 bills, that's 920. Okay? So a point is $10 per 1,000. And then priced at par, priced at discount, priced at a premium. All right? We just illustrated that with the 106. That's a bond that's priced at a premium over its par or face value. 92, that's priced at a discount. Okay? And then, of course, it was priced at 100 at par. That would be, with no discount, no premium, be priced right at its face value. And, of course, interest rate changes are what are going to move the price of bonds, and we'll talk about that. But that kind of wraps us up on the definitions, and so since we've hit a kind of a natural breaking point, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll see you back on the next module.